Jason Wilmot here. Today is Mastering Funnels podcast number 10, and the date is August 30th of 2020. So glad to be doing this today, and let me kind of just hop right into this. So today's going to be a little bit different, where we're actually just going to focus more on sort of a tutorial around Google Analytics G4 and then UTMs. So let me give you a little bit of a context behind this, and then we will get rolling. Now, hey, to those folks who are watching already, and thank you to those folks who are listening. Now, if you're listening to this today, there might be a few things going on in the screen that you can't necessarily hear, obviously. So if you do want to check out this tutorial, I would just suggest clicking through to YouTube and watching it there. So let me go ahead and hide this, because what I have learned from my team is that it is easier to recut this and repurpose this video if we don't have a bunch of stuff on the screen. So let me give you a little bit of context into this. So I had a question a couple weeks ago about G4 and UTMs. And if you're unfamiliar with G4, I created a video on this quite a ways back on how to start setting up your G4. Now, G4 is a new form of Google Analytics. Google Analytics being the main spot where we are sending most of our data, both internally and for clients. So, and then, a couple months ago, we got an email from Google. You probably did too if you're a business owner using Google Analytics, that said that they are sunsetting the current Universal Analytics, or the current version of Google Analytics is no longer going to be collecting data sometime in the summer of next year. I don't remember if it was July or whatnot. So anyways, so a lot of folks are shifting their attention now to G4, how to go in and set up, how to go set up the G4, add it to your website, and then start sending in data. So what I want to do in this video, I'm not going to show you how to set up G4 because I'm assuming that you already have that set up. If you don't, go ahead and check out another one of our videos and I will show you how to do that. But the question is, how do we start sending data into G4? And then how do we start looking for the analytics? How do we start digging into the UTMs? How do we start digging into the click data and understanding what is working and what is not? So now, at the time of this recording, G4, in my opinion, is still a little bit limited. And when it comes to UTMs, we are limited in the amount of UTM data that we can send into G4. So I'm going to give a little bit of context to what UTMs are, because I talk about it a lot. And then we'll get into actually how to set up or how to start sending in this data into your G4, how to find the data and sort of sort through it. And then kind of what I'm thinking as far as what I'm going to update on my Facebook ads in order to start sending this information in. You're going to get a little bit more info on all of that. Now, that said, this is, it's just still like I would say like the early days of G4. And so what I'm doing today might be different, a year from now. And so, potentially there's going to be a little bit more chance that we can send in more data in the future. So let me back up a little bit. So UTMs are basically the string that we send in with clicks to our website to know how they're performing, the conversion rate, if they're opting in, kind of what they're doing on our website. It's totally anonymous, works without cookies. It's a really great way to set up and understand about tracking. So if you have a question regarding UTMs or G4, go ahead and throw those in the chat and I will address them here in a few minutes. So let's talk about the current reality of G4. So G4 is a really wildly awesome tool the more that I'm digging into it, but it's also very complicated and I feel like kind of like a novice when I'm in there. But let me kind of walk you through what the current limitations are of G4, because I think it's going to give us good context moving forward into this. So in Universal Analytics, we are able to send in 5 layers of data. So think about it this way. Think of like the main category of data, and then like you have more nuanced data underneath that. So the way that I typically think about this is, or the example that I'm going to give is, let's just say this is a YouTube campaign or a Facebook campaign. This could be a TikTok campaign. Now, typically what you're doing when you're sending data into your analytics is you're looking at 5 categories or 5 layers of data. The first is being the source. So where is this click originating from? Is it from YouTube? Is it from Facebook? Is it from Instagram? Is it from TikTok? Right? It's very, very high level. And then you kind of move down one step into the medium. Now, the medium is typically reserved for, at least the way that I run this and the way that I teach, the medium is kind of reserved for, is this organic or is this paid? And it's a good way to delineate between the two, because if you're sending, if you're getting a lot of clicks from, let's say, YouTube from an organic source, you don't want to conflate that with your YouTube ads. And so you're trying to start making differences in these UTM layers as you put out more content and create more backlinks into your website. So let's just say that you have a YouTube video out there. It's organic. So if somebody clicks through that description, the source is still going to say YouTube, right? Whether it's an ad or whether it's organic, you should still identify that as coming from YouTube. And then this next layer deep is what you're trying to identify is this organic or is this paid? Now, typically, if you're using UTMs at the organic level, that's probably where you would stop. You want to know if this came from YouTube, is this organic? And then probably this next layer is called a campaign. If you're doing this organically, you would probably like write in, well, what video was it? And then there's probably no information after that. But if you live in the land of running ads and paid ads, then there's a lot of more information that you want to push into your analytics, because that is going to give you the insight whether this is working or not. And really what you're dialing down to in your analytics is this thing called your conversion rate. What is the percentage of people who are landing on this page that are opting in or doing the thing that you want them to do? Maybe it's book a call, maybe it's book a demo, sign up for a free trial, maybe it is downloading something, or maybe it's just buying something. So we have these three layers. We have got source, we've got medium, and campaign. In Universal Analytics, we can actually send in 2 layers deeper than that. We can send in, well, what is the ad group or the ad set? And typically when we're talking about ad groups and ad sets, when we're running ads, we're talking about the audience. Who is seeing this and where are they seeing it? Typically at the ad group level, we're breaking down things according to interest or demographics or placement. Was this seen on Facebook? Was this seen on Instagram? What are the demographics? Is it a lookalike audience? You're sort of breaking down those things there. Then at the next layer, that would be your term, right? So you've got your source, your medium, your campaign, and then you would have this one that I just described as the ad group. That would be your content. And then this last one is term. So this term, this is where we send in our ad info. So what ad was it? What variation? What copy was it? All of that. So when you have lived in this space long enough, like I have, that is all of the information. I mean, I wish I could send in more, but that is all of the information that I'm typically sending in, so that I can break this down. So if I'm opening up my analytics, I can see what source is converting best. Then I can go down to, well, what campaign is best? So if I'm running a couple different campaigns on Instagram or a couple different campaigns on TikTok, I can break that down inside my analytics, and I have a good idea of which one is converting and which one is not. Where should we reallocate spend? That sort of thing. So on top of that, though, I can also go in deeper. So let's just say some campaign is really going well, and I have some split tests going on in my audience level or the ad group level. Well, from there, I just go into my analytics and see what is converting better according to the conversion rate. And then if I want to get in a little bit lower into that, I can go in and I can look at the term or the ad. So which ad is actually converting versus another one. It is very important that we use something like Google Analytics in addition to our platform analytics like Facebook or TikTok, because these have a view through window that sometimes could be up to 7 days. So if somebody is seeing your ad on Facebook, they come to your website, they leave, and then they come back organically and they opt in. Well, Google Analytics is going to show that was an organic opt-in, but Facebook or Instagram is going to say, no, they came in within 7 days. That's actually going to be attributed to the Facebook side of things. So I'm not here to debate what one is right, because they're kind of both right in a sense. You're trying to kind of read between the lines here. But this is where things get a little bit complicated with G4. Well, G4 doesn't, at this current stage, doesn't have the ability to pass in these two lower levels of data, meaning you're only going to be able to send in the source, the medium, and the campaign into G4. So it really complicates things if you're like digging into Google Analytics and really trying to like do your conversion rate optimization. So if I haven't lost you by now, well, then congratulations, we're going to get into this. But I know, like, I wanted to provide a little bit of context to this before getting in. This is a very technical process. This is very very nuanced, I would say, topic to be talking about, and probably not super interesting to those folks who are just trying to get into digital marketing. But as you get into digital marketing, you are going to realize that it all boils down to patterns of data. That is it. It all boils down to patterns of data. So what content can you use to send people into your offer or to your website and have them inevitably opt in? And you're just looking at the data over time. So here's where the problem arises though, right? In G4, we can't send in that data into at the ad set level and at the ad level, right? They just don't have that baked in. Now, I don't know if that's on the roadmap or if that is just a new feature. We'll use that term loosely. If that is a new feature of analytics that they're just not going to share that. So what I aim to do in this video, what I aim to do is show you how to start sending data into G4 and then how to kind of dig around in your analytics to find that source and that campaign and that medium level. And then sort of some ideas about what I'm thinking about how to start structuring my UTM information on a Facebook campaign in order to start pushing things in. So I am going to share my screen, and this is going to be mostly me sharing my screen during this whole episode. So let's put the caption up though, because this came from one of you. This is a question from David. And David, I appreciate you asking this question. And David kept on poking. He just kept on saying like, hey, can you make this, Jason? Can you update this? And so David, I just want to thank you for this question. So let me just read it out loud. It's G4 UTM question from David. Can you make a video about UTM tracking setup with GA4? I'm still learning how to do this. So David is a student. He's gone through our Mastering Funnels training as well as Funnel Accelerator, and he's using this and he's using our method. But then all of a sudden he's saying, okay, well, like with this update, how do I adjust what is going on? So that is kind of what we're going to be. That's what we're going to be diving into. So here's what we're going to specifically be talking about, though. There's a system of what I want to show you, and then we're going to get into this. So first, what we need to do is we're going to have to get into our, first, like what I would recommend is, and what I teach in Mastering Funnels is setting up something like a conversion master template where you're identifying what conversions are actually moving the needle for your business. If I lost you there, what a conversion is this the one thing that you need in order to grow your revenue, right? So it's the phone calls. If your business relies on inbound phone calls, then we're tracking phone calls. If it's a SaaS company and you are doing free trials or demos or something like that, then it is that. If it is e-com, then it is a purchase. So just keep that in mind. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that this event is getting sent into your Google Analytics. And so let me kind of show you what that looks like. So I'm going to drop this down. We'll hide this and then we will share my screen, and I might lose my audio for a second. So I'm just going to stop talking. All right, there we are. So in order to understand G4, what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand, I'm going to start kind of here at the end, and then we're going to work this way. So ideally what we're trying to understand is, where are people coming in, and then are they opting in successfully? Now, unfortunately, I don't have a ton of data for you because I'm showing you my own analytics. I'm not going to show you any of the client data because, well, that would break our contractual agreement, and that would just be egregious, wouldn't it? So I don't have a whole lot of events here to show you, but I'm going to kind of walk you through what this is. So inside of your Google Analytics, you have this thing called events, and this works a little bit differently than Universal Analytics. So G4 is always listening. It's listening for what events are coming into the website. The events in this case would be JavaScript. It's just like, what are the actions that people are taking on the page? Are they clicking? Are they downloading something? This is Calendly right here. So they're coming in. Maybe they're looking at something. Maybe they're booking a phone call. Maybe they're selecting a time or a date. And then this is the one that we're going to be talking about today. So this is an opt-in for a webinar. I only have one because we've stopped running traffic to this quite a while ago. But I wanted to leave this in here because that is kind of what I'm going to show you. Now, this event does not occur naturally. We had to create this and push this in. And I want to show you how to do this. So in Google Tag Manager, we have already connected our G4 to our Google Tag Manager. So we created the tag that was just G4. So all of a sudden, our website is now sending data to G4. That's a very easy thing to do. I showed you how to do this a couple of weeks ago. Nonetheless, after we connect on the website or Tag Manager to G4, what we have to do is we have to create a trigger. And this is exactly what we did in this case. So this trigger is based upon a page view. So at the time, we were running ads to a landing page where somebody would opt in and watch a webinar. And the URL of the successful opt-in would be this. So the video occurs on this URL right here. So they come to the website, they opt in, and then they're redirected to this. Now, this is what we wanted to kind of train the machine learning around. And so this is the success page, or this is the conversion. So if somebody opts in, then they're redirected to this page. And so on this page, what we said is if somebody fires this page URL, or if our JavaScript, if our website loads this URL, then what we want it to do is to send an event into G4. And in this case, we named it JW opt-in success, or in this case, I misspelled success. So, so you're sending this event in, and this event will live in analytics. Now, again, this won't occur naturally. Some of your events will occur naturally. If you have integrations, these will come in naturally, but sometimes they don't. I've been working with a lot of integrations, and you would be surprised that not all of them integrate yet with G4 or push the data in. So what you have to do in this case is we have to push it in through Google Tag Manager, and we start sending those events in. And what G4, again, is doing is it's listening for these events. Now, typically, these events aren't going to show up right away. Sometimes it's going to take up to 24 hours. I just built something out for a client where it did not show up for a few days, actually. So this could be a little bit frustrating. So I think the key here is, though, is this is not immediate like universal analytics. This is something where we have to send in this event, and this event has to occur. This G4 has to capture it and identify it. So once it is identified and it just shows up here in your configuration, and in your configuration, I'm under events. All that we have to do here is we toggle on this as a conversion. So you see I have two conversions here: if a meeting is scheduled and if an opt-in occurs successfully. So we have that now. And that is really the key to a lot of this, right? So when we're talking about UTM information and all of this, what we're trying to do is we're trying to send information in to analyze it against this constant. And so the constant in this case is our conversion. So when we back up out of this, what we want to do is we want to identify the sources that are coming to this page, and then who is opting in from there. So David, I hope you are watching, and I hope I am kind of guiding you through this correctly. So step one, we have gone into GTM, or Google Tag Manager. We have created this. We've created this tag that is a G4 tag. Then our website is connected. Then what we have to do is we have to go in and create this trigger. So this trigger is referencing this page view. So if there is a page view, then send in this event to G4. Then if our event is successfully sent in, we should see the event inside of our configure events, and then we should see it here. Again, that might take 24 hours. It might take more time than that, so give it a little bit of time. From there, I toggle it on to a conversion, and then where we are is we're good to go from here. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my reports. And this is going to be my acquisition and user acquisition. So the acquisition is very similar to your universal analytics, where you're looking at the different sources, right? Now, these are right now our channel groupings. So G4 kind of detects, is this coming direct? Is this from a paid social? Is this from organic search, organic social, all of these different things. So these are your channel groupings. And again, what you're trying to do once you have created this event over to, once you've created this conversion from your events, you can then go down and select which event you want. So I'm just going to do this, and there's only going to be one, like I said, because we're not running traffic to this at the time. And so all of a sudden, this is kind of going to be familiar to you if you're familiar with universal analytics. We're looking over on the right side, right over here, to identify what the conversion is. And then we're going over to the left side to sort of understand, well, what source or what traffic is leading to those conversions. So in this case, you can see that this direct led to the one opt-in that I'm showing you. Again, I'm not showing you a whole lot of data here, and I apologize for that, but that's what we're working with. And I don't want to show you anything else beyond, any client, because again, they wouldn't be too happy with that. So from here, though, how do we start breaking down these pieces to UTM. So you heard earlier that I referenced source, medium, and campaign. And at the moment, those are the only three categories that we can go in and identify. So if I click this button right here, this drop down, then I can all of a sudden start seeing these different ways where I can sort my acquisition against my event count over here. So here you have source medium. So if I click on that, that'll pull up both the source and the medium. So if we've got Facebook ads, CPC, Google ads, or Google CPC, we can start seeing the source breakdown. Now, if you wanted to go just source, you could do just source. If you want to do campaign, then we could do campaign. Now, here is something, though, that I think is important to understand. There is, at the moment, a little bit more data gathered if you're running Google Ads. So if you're familiar with Universal Analytics, in the past, you can sort a lot of your acquisition according to your Google ad campaigns. Obviously, because Google Analytics and Google Ads, I think, are owned by the same company, then they pass data fairly well. And I will say fairly well because there's a lot of times where sometimes even if you're using UTMs in your Google ads, they're not going to measure up with your actual Google ads when you're sorting it in your Universal Analytics. So again, that's why it's always best to use both UTMs when you're sorting through this, so you can sort through it according to this traditional method using your UTMs in your campaign versus the Google Ads sort of integration. So, so here you have this campaign, right? So we can see this campaign here, and we know again that this was the opt-ins came directly from this. So how do we go from here? Well, from my mind, what I'm understanding is, well, we only have 3 areas in which we can start passing information. So this makes me want to think about, well, rather than sending in 5 layers of information, should we then condense these 5 layers into 3? And that's kind of what I'm going to show you in this video. So I'm going to use Facebook ads as an example in this, and then we will probably finish up here in a little bit. So if you're familiar with Facebook ads, this is going to be the same as TikTok ads or Google ads, where you can send in multiple layers of information. But in this case, we can only capture 3 different layers. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing, but I could show you at least something that we could do in the meantime. So I'm in Facebook ads. I'm at the ad level. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says build a URL parameter. And this is typically where we're sending in these 3 levels of UTM. So here's the source, medium, campaign, content, and then we manually pass through the term. So at the campaign level, I just push in the name of the campaign. Makes sense there, right? At the content level, which is the ad group or ad set, I'm just passing through the name of the ad set. And then at the term level, what I typically do is I pass through the name as well as the placement. Where was this seen? Was it in the Instagram feed? Was it in a mobile feed, Facebook feed? Was it in the right-hand corner? Like, that's what placement is going to tell you. So I don't know what to do with this. Now, I've got a couple different thoughts. One would be you just rename your source as Facebook_ads. So that could kind of negate the need to put the medium in here as ads, right? I said earlier, typically at the medium level, we're trying to know whether this is an organic or whether this is paid. Maybe we could just put it all up into Facebook ads or Facebook. We could do Facebook CPC. We could like kind of move our stuff up into that. Then from there, I would still want to keep the campaign name the same, but perhaps I'm moving these ad sets and the other parameters up here into the medium. Or maybe I could do, something similar to this, where I'm moving them all into that level. So I don't know, David. Like, this is kind of what I'm thinking about, and I don't really have a great answer for you, because at the time, what we're doing is we're still just pushing all of this information into UA. Where this gets a little bit different, though, is when you are sending this information into a CRM like Salesforce or in HubSpot, right? Because what we're trying to do in a CRM in this case is we're trying to understand, like, when we're on the phone with this person, or if we close this person, or there's, patterns of data that are emerging. What we really want to understand is, like, well, where are the best customers coming from? And you're going to have to, if you're currently running 5 layers of UTM information in your ads, you're probably going to have to talk to your sales team about how you're going to start putting those into the CRM so that they know, so they can start digging through maybe your new updated UTM placement. So this is where things are going to get a little bit, I don't want to say gray, but just like this is going to be pretty unique to your own situation. Again, I can't say that this is right or wrong. I think this is just going to be sort of something that you feel out and try to understand. Now, that being said, at the moment, I've not updated this for anything because I'm not using G4 as a replacement. One of the main reasons why we're not using G4 as a replacement is because we want to just see all of the data at all of the layers. And so we have G4 for all of our clients and ourselves, but we're not necessarily making heavy lifting decisions based upon the data that we're finding in G4, if that makes sense. So hopefully this continues and Google will start allowing this ad or the content and the term to be passed through. But until then, I think it's just going to be sort of a WYSIWYG sort of, sort of a WYSIWYG sort of play. So again, you could put these at the medium if you're not going to really use the medium. Move that CPC up to the top, and so you'd have a better idea there. So if you have any deeper questions on this, listen, I know that this is sort of just figuring it out, but honestly, like this is sort of digital marketing 101, right? Not everything comes easy. Not everything is a YouTube video. Things are constantly changing. And so what you're going to have to do is just do best practice as you see fit. But again, I think it is most important in this case to understand who is looking at the data, right? If you're a solopreneur and you just are doing this yourself, then just come up with what makes sense to you. Maybe this is perfect. Maybe this is exactly what you just need to do right here. But if you have a sales team involved, if you have a CRM involved, this is where it's going to get a little bit more complicated. So everybody needs to get on the same page. But I do think that it is worth setting up G4 and just starting to dig into the analytics and getting yourself a little bit familiar with this, because I do see the power of G4. I see a lot of power behind it and a lot of data. And, it's capturing more things than universal analytics. But at the same time, I just feel so well versed in universal analytics at the moment that that's where I just go in and I make my decisions there. And I might wait up until the last minute to like hop into G4 and start making my decisions there because I have more data. And if I was handed 2 sets of data, and over here on this side, it says, okay, well, Jason, you have a lot of data, and this is a way that we can sort it and dig into it and analyze it. And plus, you've been doing it this way for a long time, and I'm just familiar with it, so I can make decisions quickly, find patterns quickly. Or on this side where it's limited data and it's a little bit clunky, well, I'm going to pick the one that's over here right now because sales matter right now, opt-ins matter right now. So that's where I'm going to just continue to spend my time and energy. Now, all of that said, I do have G4 set up for all of our clients. We've got it on our own stuff. So we're still collecting the data, but we're not necessarily using G4 to make the decisions. So wanted to clarify there a little bit. Like, again, I think this is just going to be what best practice looks like to you is going to be a little bit different than what best practice looks like to me. Where I would err on this side is just make sure that you have both G4 and Universal Analytics set up. Right? I think that's step 1. And I think step 2 is understanding how to use Google Tag Manager to send those events in that you want to be listening to. And then from there, I think it's kind of walking back and understanding, well, I could use G4 for this, or I could use Universal Analytics for this. Maybe you're going to try to use both. But at the end of the day, I think what matters most is obviously sales and the data attributed to those sales. So, you might have to do something a little bit custom along the way. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I think that is that. So hopefully that wasn't like too, I don't know. Hopefully it wasn't too gray. Hopefully it wasn't too like lofty or like, well, I don't know what to do, but you could try this. But again, I want to reiterate that sometimes in this world of digital marketing, it's just that we're just going to have to adapt, have a sort of a growth mindset and understand that not everything is going to be perfect and we're going to have to adjust to it. So I did get one question in during the chat. So from Mr. John Moore, if migrating into G4, what are some things to be aware of before starting to make it as painless as possible? I've heard account structure and event parameter structure need to be considered, but wondering if there's anything else to keep in mind. So good question here, John. What I think here in this case, if you're migrating things into G4, really where your thinking always starts is events. So we have to be listening to events, and events are things that are occurring on our page. Now, events gets a little bit more technical, right? But because what you're going to have to do is you're going to typically do there's two ways that these events get in there. I should say three. The first is Google Analytics just happens to catch it, which is going to be very seldom, right? It's just not going to work that often. The second is you have integrations. So if you have integrations like Calendly, right, where you're booking phone calls, that's going to just pipe in all of that information immediately for you. And you saw that. It was like invitee or invitee date select, invitee time select, invitee, complete or confirmed. And so these integrations are naturally going to push these events in. But so I've been working with Drift lately for a client too. And Drift doesn't send in information, all of the information. It sends in like, does the chat start and all this other stuff. But what it didn't actually confirm was if a booked demo or a booked call was made. And that was like, well, that's sort of the main reason of why we're using this piece of software. And we can't rely on G4 to show us that data. Moreover, on that point, some of these integrations like Calendly are going to allow you to send these events in to G4 and Universal Analytics at the same time. Whereas Drift, you can only choose one. So this is where things get a little bit complicated, right? So if you have one, if you can only send these events into one property, what property are you going to do? And at this case, we just kind of made the decision, well, we spend the most time in Universal Analytics, so let's just stay in Universal Analytics. So painless as possible would be only use things that integrate with G4. The caveat with that, though, is not everything is integrating correctly and not everything integrates with both. So you might kind of be stuck at this either or. And I go back to what I said earlier. If it's going to be the either I get my data into something where I can read, I'm just probably going to send it there. So I did put in a request to Drift, by the way, so that it can send it to both, but we'll see if that actually happens. So the second part of your question, I've heard about structure and event parameter structure needs to be considered, but I wonder if there's anything else to keep in mind that is high impact. I think obviously I just covered the parameters, so I'm not going to cover that again, but I think understanding GTM or Google Tag Manager is going to be your best friend when it comes to Google Analytics G4. Again, because G4 is relying on those events. And so it is best to know how to send an event in. And that is the power behind Google Tag Manager. It's just like, okay, well, what do I want to send in? Do I want to send in a specific thank you page? So if they hit a thank you page, I can just send that in. So really, I think the magic behind any Google Analytics, whether it's G4 or UA or Universal Analytics here, there's a lot of technobabble, a lot of mumbo jumbo in here, but hey, I'm speaking to my audience. So I think the ease is understanding how to think about what event you want to capture, and then just the ability to send it in. Because like I said, Google isn't going to necessarily like listen to this. It's not going to understand page views. Like in the old version of Universal Analytics, you can set a conversion, just type in the URL, and it's like, okay, sounds good. We'll start tracking that. That capability does not exist in G4. So you have to have this understanding of how to create these tags in Google Tag Manager to send those page views in as events. So my brain, I love it. I mean, I love it. I love thinking through events. I think that's a better way to think about things, but it has definitely complicated a lot of pieces. That being said, it also like simplifies some things. So if you have 4 pages that you want to fire an event on, and it's going to be the same event, it's really hard to do that in Universal Analytics. You would have to have like 4 different goals. Whereas in G4, you could just send all of those page views in as one event. And lo and behold, it's just going to sit there in Google Analytics or in G4. So you can just, turn that event into a conversion. So I know that I've kind of talked all over the board in this podcast. And again, it's probably going to be easier to hop into the YouTube stream if you want to learn more about this or just follow along. But yeah, hopefully we answered your question, David. And so thank you for the question, David. I appreciate that. Thank you, John, for the question as well. It's a good follow-up. And I think that's where we'll probably end today. A little bit shorter podcast today, sort of feeling a little under the weather. So I was debating whether I want to do this today or not. But again, I think consistency is everything. And here we are, finishing up podcast number 10. So if you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask about G4 or Google Tag Manager or UTMs, go ahead and drop those in the comments below. I will go ahead and address those questions. Maybe not on the next podcast, but maybe it'll take me two, and this is as is the case with David's question. So yeah, drop those below. More than happy to make the content around it. It obviously makes my life easy. Filling the needs that people have. If they have questions, I'd love to be the source of that. So I think that's it. I think we'll stop here for today. I just want to say that I appreciate you, you viewing, you stopping by to ask questions, asking questions after the fact, and then listening to this as well. So hope you find this podcast well. Hope everything is going all right for you. And thanks for stopping by. Take care of one another, and we'll see you in the next live stream or in the next